Finally! Was it really that hard to remake one of these classic monsters? Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson, and this is my review for the 2020 remake of The Invisible Man, which is directed by Leigh Whannell, and is, I'm hesitant to say remake of the original 1933 Invisible Man, because the two movies actually feel completely different from one another, so I'm just going to say it's another adaptation of H.G. Wells' novel. But anyway, this movie follows a woman played by Elisabeth Moss, who is in a very abusive relationship, and she just decides to get out of there one night. She runs away, decides to stay the night at her friend's place, and soon afterwards she finds out that the man that she left actually committed suicide, and she's been given a large sum of money. So her fears of them seem to be over, except that there are weird supernatural things happening throughout the house that she's in, or wherever she goes, and she is convinced that there is an invisible man walking among her, screwing with her, and that it could possibly be her ex. So last week I reviewed the original version of The Invisible Man from 1933, and I was actually really excited for this movie, despite Universal's sketchy history of trying to remake their Universal monsters in the last decade. I didn't see Benicio del Toro's Wolfman, but I heard that it was just kind of a mediocre standalone remake. But with Dracula Untold and The Mummy, those were two separate attempts to try to start their equivalent of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but with the monsters. And both times it didn't work, especially with The Mummy. That was a big price to pay. But when I heard that there was going to be a remake of The Invisible Man, and it was going to be produced by Blumhouse, and directed by the director of Upgrade, Leigh Whannell, I thought this could work. Because Jason Blum and Blumhouse have been killing it with horror movies. I mean, they'll occasionally release some terrible stuff here and there, but when they make a good horror movie like Get Out, Happy Death Day, and Halloween 2018, they are damn good movies. And then back in 2018, Leigh Whannell did a really great action sci-fi thriller called Upgrade, which starred Logan Marshall Green, and if you never saw that movie, you should check it out. It is badass, and it's one of my top 10 favorite movies of that year. So I was definitely looking forward to The Invisible Man, and I will say this right off the bat. Not only is this a true horror movie in every sense of the word horror, but I honestly think that this is a superior version of The Invisible Man compared to the 1933 version. And look, there's no denying that that original version is a classic, but it's not really scary, all things considered. This movie right here is legit horror, and much like with Halloween 2018, it's a horror movie about something. The big theme of this movie right here, at least from what I gathered, is spousal abuse and how that can really screw with someone's mind. Because throughout the entire movie, Elisabeth Moss's character is trying to forget about this abusive relationship. And when these weird things start happening, she is still convinced that it's her ex causing all these problems. It's just nobody can see him. I mean, despite the fact that this movie is called The Invisible Man and you're expecting to see an invisible man, you could take that theme and really go somewhere with it. Is Elisabeth Moss's character that traumatized by the relationship that she is just losing her mind and going crazy, or are her fears actually realized and yeah, her ex is really causing all these problems? And speaking of Elisabeth Moss, she is fantastic in the movie. You really see her go through all this hell, you see her trying to pick her life back up together and confront her fears, and throughout the whole movie she just has this look of exhaustion. Like, she is tired, she's schizophrenic, she's terrified, and you believe it every time she's on screen. She commands this movie. As for the Invisible Man himself, unlike the 1933 movie, he's not the main character this time around, which is fine. And back in my review of the original, I mentioned how Claude Rains really just likes to mess with people, whether it's just killing them or just screwing with their minds, whether it's partially dressing in clothes or stealing bikes or knocking hats off. So it definitely has a more comedic vibe to it. There's nothing comedic about this movie at all. The Invisible Man here is a straight up horror character. He makes sure he is not seen, he makes sure he is well hidden from everyone else, and it's his goal to try to make sure that Elisabeth Moss is going crazy. And just to really screw with her. And I actually didn't expect this movie to be as gory or as violent as possible. While the scares and the atmosphere are really well done, there are some really cool kills here as well. If you think back to Upgrade, you remember that scene where Logan Marshall Green pretty much gives that one thug the Joker treatment by just taking a knife and doing this. There are some kills in this movie that don't quite come to that level of creativity, but when the kills do happen in this movie, I just watched them and went, God damn! Wow, I didn't expect this movie to go to the level of violence that it does. But the best part about those kills, when they do happen, is that they're never over the top to the point where it takes you out of the movie, because it's still suspenseful regardless. And the kills just happen to make things a little more cool. So I don't have much to say in terms of complaints. I guess the only thing I'd really have to say as a criticism is that near the end of the movie, there's a character that is trying to go forward with some sort of motive or plan that I didn't really quite get. The way that sequence was conveyed just seemed like they kind of rushed it. It's just a very vague scene that I feel like if I saw this movie a second time, I'd probably get it. But on the first try, I just kind of sat there going, wait, what just happened there? I don't quite understand. Well, whatever. The movie's good. And yeah, I mean, good doesn't cut it. This movie is great. Like I said, I think this is a superior version to the 1933 movie because you don't have to compare this version to that original. It's a different movie on its own. It's a true definition of horror. The kills are incredible. Elisabeth Moss is fantastic. The scares, tension, and atmosphere are truly effective. And between this and Upgrade, Leigh Whannell is really starting to become a powerhouse in terms of horror and thrillers. So I would definitely say this movie is worth seeing in your lifetime. If you're a horror fan, you're going to dig this movie a lot, which, considering how 2020 has been in terms of horror movies, this is a breath of fresh air. And if this movie ends up being a massive hit, then I would love to see Blumhouse try to remake other Universal horror movies, because they got it. Rather than doing what Dracula Untold and The Mummy did, where they just made straight up action movies, The Invisible Man did horror. And that's what these Universal monsters should be. They should be horror movies. And I think The Invisible Man is a great step in the right direction. And there you go. That's my review for the 2020 remake of The Invisible Man. And now I want to know what you guys think about the movie. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, leave a comment, support my Patreon page, follow me on social media, and until next time, this is the Real Mr. Robinson telling you there is only one.